Business isn't a snapshot, it's a movie.
Brent Saunders, a world-renowned Fortune 500 CEO who's completed more than 300 billion of mergers and acquisitions throughout his career.
Brent Saunders.
Brent Saunders.
Brent Saunders.
We talked about this offline a little bit, the difference between stress and pressure.
I don't feel stress at work. I'm not sure I have in 20 years.
He's the current chairman and CEO of Bausch & Lomb, chairman of Rome, and the former CEO of Allergan, which he sold to AbbVie for $83 billion.
The first thing I think about are the people. Like, do we have good people? Can we get the job done? Hiring is the most important decisions you make as a leader or as a manager.
He's a pioneer in the health and beauty industry, directly responsible for building some of the biggest consumer brands like Botox, Claritin, and Coppertone. You sold Allergan to AbbVie for $83 billion. The next morning, what was going through your head?
May of 2020, a lot of people thought it was the end of the world, if you
Yeah.
recall. But the real reason the next morning wasn't probably a big deal is the deal had been signed almost a year prior.
Wow. It's a
Right,
year
and
of
so-
diligence and
No, a year of regulatory approvals around
Wow.
the world. You know, the FTC, the European Commission, the China regulatory authorities, and several other countries around the world to approve a deal of that size. And as I best understand it, up till recently, I think it was the largest deal to close since. I don't think there's been...
that was the largest M&A in history
No. I think that was the last big one to close.
since the...
And I don't think till today there's been a bigger one that closed.
What was going through your head? Did you feel accomplished? Were you like having...
No, I think I
crisis?
was more...
What was it?
Yeah, you would think so, but no. There was no victory lap. I thought about, okay, what do I do next?
That was the immediate thought.
There were probably two. It was, what do I do next, right? And the world was... everybody was on Zooms or lockdown or whatever, right? So it
Yeah.
wasn't like you could go out and network with people very easily. And then the second thing that I had hoped was that for the people of Allergan who worked so hard to get us to that deal, were they going to be okay at AbbVie? I think most of it worked out for most people. Yeah.
It wasn't this like rocky moment on the top of the stairs.
No. I was disappointed. I loved what I loved to work. I loved Allergan. It was from beginning to end through all its maturations.
Yeah.
It was almost 9 years of my life.
I'm curious. I know this is hard to oversimplify, but like in 2020 hindsight, so few people become CEOs of public companies, let alone Fortune 500 companies. What would you say were those couple like trajectory defining moments for you that allowed you to get to that level?
I think probably the biggest career decision I ever made was I was a partner at Pricewaterhouse in the consulting side, and leaving there to go into industry was probably the biggest career defining kind of fork in the road that I ever faced. I don't know if and I tell this to a lot of younger leaders that I meet with, I don't know if I would make the decision again, if faced with it twice or three times, right? It's hard to know, right? I had a great career path. I had great job security. I was doing incredibly well financially, and I had just had my second child born. I had bought my first house, and I decided to take a job that paid 30% of what I was making, or a 70% pay cut, to go into industry and become an executive at a pharmaceutical company. It was called Shearing Plow at the time, and most people thought I was nuts. I even thought I was nuts. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that I didn't want to be a consultant forever. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot there, but I couldn't ever imagine myself doing that for 20 or 30 more years.
Yeah.
When I worked with big companies, particularly pharmaceutical companies, as a consultant, I really felt like I could make a difference and I could do that job on the other side. It looked easier than it was, right, from the other side of
retrospect.
right? But
Yeah.
I remember just really thinking to myself, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And if I stay here longer, I'll be trapped here forever. And I have to do something different. Let the financial cards fall where they may, and maybe it would be the stupidest financial decision in the world, but at least I'll be doing something I want to really be passionate about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why the pharmaceutical space? What was there pulling you to that space?
My family's in healthcare. My grandfather was a pharmacist. My other grandfather was a podiatrist. My dad was a urologist. So I'd been around healthcare. I just didn't take enough science classes in college or to go to med school. So the only way I could get into kind of healthcare was on the business side of it. I was just fascinated with the idea of working to solve like big real world problems, like diseases. And that was really complex and difficult. You know, I had to self-teach myself science. I had to learn the business, marketing, selling, right? Finance.
What was the main skill set that transferred over from PwC? Were you more of a sales go-to-market guy, like more of an operations executive, or what was the core skill set you had built that allowed you to transfer over?
Yeah, so you know what made me successful at consulting, and I think I was one of the youngest partners ever at Pricewaterhouse, and may be still holding it close to that record, was understanding the value of your team, right? The way you become successful in a consultancy is having great teams that can deliver great customer service or client service, right? And solve problems, right? And really deliver. And so, you know, I started building a team at PwC. It started with 3 people, then it was 10 people, then it was 30 people. So I could service multiple accounts with excellence and really do well. And I think to this day, it's probably the skill that I've taken from there that has translated into the most success is surround yourself with really freaking smart people. Right?
Yeah, easier said than done, right?
Right. No, and you understand this, right?
Yeah.
But the selection process and the rigor and discipline,
Yeah.
finding great people, but probably more important, cultivating and helping build great people.
That's a
too.
great point.
And you have to have both,
Yeah.
right? And that's the full recipe.
Yeah.
But you know, even to this day, I think about everything I'm doing now. The first thing I think about are the people. Like, do we have good people? Can we get the job done? Can we deliver, right? Do the people we have, you know, can they get there?
Yeah, it's interesting because at your scale, this just fascinates me. Why I'm excited to learn from you. At Allergan, you mentioned you had north of 80,000
At its peak.
at its absolute peak.
Yep.
Roughly 80,000 something employees at Bausch and Lomb. You're still at 13,000 plus right now.
Correct.
It's just huge numbers of people that for someone like me, it's hard to fathom leading that many people. Like doing tens of millions in revenue for me is complicated, let alone billions in revenue.
Right.
Like, how the hell does this guy do it? What did you come to understand about leadership and what it takes to be effective at that level of scale?
It's about the team around you, right?
Yeah.
And the bigger the organization or the number of people you're managing, it's about the layers of great people, right? And so have you ever, let me ask you a question. You know, I think about talent as A talent, B talent, or C talent, right? You have A, B's, and C's. Have you ever seen a B player hire an A player?
Never.
If you don't start with A players around you and you make one compromise, it exponentially reverberates through the organization, right? And so you really have to be careful about the team that's around you. So, for example, when I came to Bausch and Lomb, I guess it was 18 months ago or thereabout, you know, I looked at the team that was there and really great people, but I also knew that my timeline was more accelerated than perhaps a traditional new CEO coming in, right? It was a turnaround, and I felt like we needed to move very quickly to get back into the business of eye care, right? We're an eye care company. And so I don't quote me on the number. I think I had 11 direct reports. I replaced 9 of the people within the first 3 months.
Wow.
And not necessarily because the other ones weren't good. I didn't have time to get to know them. I didn't have the year to figure out.
So you needed people you could trust that you knew could execute.
I needed guarantees that next level were going to be A players. And then I needed to make sure that their teams under them were A players, and really spend a lot of time thinking about that, working on that, and, you know, putting that into place. And then continuing to really encourage people to think about hiring as the most important decisions you make as a leader or as a manager. I always say, if we're going to go buy a capital equipment, we need to go buy something. We have all sorts of forms and business cases, and we're going to look at ROI. If we want to buy a business or a product, we'll do exhaustive analysis. When we go hire somebody, it's just like, okay, we interviewed them, let's hire them. It doesn't make sense to me. That person is more important than any capital equipment we're going to buy or any small business or product we're going to buy. That person, you know, will stay for several years. Fully loaded costs are pretty high. And then they're going to hire 7 or 8 other people that are going to either infect us with energy or absorb our energy, right?
Good point.
And so, it's the fruit from the poisonous tree, or it's the apple that makes everybody happy, right? It's one or the other. And so, I think for PwC taught me the value of people. It's almost a religion to me, right? But you have to have great people. Don't compromise.
When you're looking for a talent, it can be a bit esoteric. But what does a talent look like? How do I know I've got the best absolute executives in the world for this job? What are the filters that you're thinking through as you're assessing your team?
I love the concept of grit. Have you ever read that book?
I love Angela Duckworth.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have her coming to speak to my leadership team in January.
Oh, amazing.
I've had her do it a few times at other companies. But I really do believe you have to look at obviously skills, obviously the right, skill set or background for the particular role.
Yeah.
If it's a more technical role, you're going to look at technical skills. If it's a more leadership role, you're going to look at past experiences in management. So that's certainly part of the equation. But then there's this other kind of innate sense of, does this person fit in, right? Are they going to add value? Are they going to energize the organization? And there I start to look at some of the Angela Duckworth, grit scale. Are these people that have overcome problems? Are they going to plow through, to solutions? Does, adversity and challenges, inspire them versus, create fear? And so, I'm a big believer of that. And then, I think it's so important to check references personally and make the calls yourself. Don't let the headhunter or the executive search firm. They can do some of them, but I always, when they send me the list of, okay, here are the 8 references, I look at the 3 most important and I say, I'll take those.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you guys can check the boxes on the other 5.
100% agree with that. Yeah, I think back channels too are interesting.
Absolutely. Now I'm at a point where I know so many people. I have a pretty big network.
Yeah.
I know somebody worked at that company. I can get to that person, right? I can figure it out. And I do that. And those sometimes are the best because they're not quote on the record, right?
Oh, that's the best. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's completely truthful.
Yep.
I love one of the questions too. Someone recently told me is like, when you're doing a reference check, if I called you a year from now and told you I fired this person or they didn't work out, why do you think that would be?
Right.
Right. And they'll tell you, well, there was this one thing about him that you probably
That's
should know.
a great question. Yeah, I asked the same thing. It's a great question, Or when faced with a problem, how did this person respond? Or, what makes this person tick? Like, explain it to me. What would their coworkers say about him? Right.
Yeah. I think that's a great point on hiring to mention too, is like, I think we can get overly focused on pedigree.
Yep.
And you really like on resume, you can't.
Well, I don't have pedigree, so I don't care about anybody else's pedigree.
Yeah. It's just funny. Like people like really glorify having certain name brands and all that. But it's like, were you the person that actually created the lift in that company, or were you riding someone else's coattail?
Exactly.
Like what inflection point did you join that company? What did you contribute to it?
Right.
Like there's all these nuanced things, and having back channels and references. If you just take one thing alone from this podcast, if you're hiring a team at all and you just do those things and you back channel and reference and actually get real validating points, that could in and of itself change your whole company.
I totally agree. And reference has to be by the hiring manager.
Yes.
I can think of a big mistake I made when I think of one of the people I was involved in hiring. One of the board members, I was a board member, one of my fellow board members said, oh, I know the CEO of his last company. I'll make the call. And he did. And he came back and said, oh, it's all great. It's, here's what he said. This is what happened. And the guy didn't work out. And I happened to be at a function with the CEO of that company. I said, let me ask you a question. What happened? What's your take on this guy? He goes, he's a clown. I'm like, well, didn't so-and-so call you for a reference? He's like, he never called me for a reference.
No. Oh.
So I went back to him. I said, you didn't call the CEO? He goes, no. I called I think he said the head of HR. I'm like, well, that's not the same thing. Like, why did I trust you, right? Like, I in my heart of hearts, I knew I should have made the call. But boards are, you try to be collegial and
collaborative.
Right. But I knew I needed to make the call, and I didn't. I let myself down and burned a lot of time and a lot of pain for a lot of people.
That's a valuable lesson to learn, though.
Yeah.
When it comes to firing, I want to get your take here, because this is the thing.
Fire fast.
I struggle a lot with this. I've had people on for a year at a time sometimes where they were a great culture fit, great humans, but then eventually they ended up souring because they weren't getting the results they want and became a cancer.
Right.
And I think when you have a big heart and you care about people and you feel some responsibility for their success, you want to give them extra shots. But that's the biggest struggle I've had to.
Look, the hardest thing you have to do as a manager or leader is fire somebody.
Yeah.
It's gut wrenching. To this day, I stay up at night thinking about it. It definitely gets to me. It gets to, gets to your emotions. It gets to your heart.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you want to do the right thing for an organization, fire fast. I can't tell you how many people I work with or on boards or invest in their companies, and they're like, well, we're giving this person another year. We're going to see how they do. We're going to put them on a performance plan. We're going to do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And I said to them, but in your heart of hearts, is this person going to make it? They're like, no. I'm like, then do them the favor and do the company a favor and appropriately exit that person, right? Do it with the right dignity, do it with the right compassion, do it with the right security or severance or whatever you want to call it. But letting that person stay in the career and fail for another year is robbing them of a year of unsuccessful, career.
Mm-hmm.
And you're hurting everybody around.
Mm.
And so what's the good of it, right? I haven't heard many people say to me, I fired too fast. I regret it. I wish I had that person back. I don't know. Have you, honestly, how many times have you heard that?
I can't say once.
I've never heard it.
Never.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, I was just talking to a friend of mine who runs a pretty big size construction company.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, I don't know about this guy. And, he's been here 3 years. I like him personally, but I said, you know the answer. He said, what do you mean? I said, you know the answer. I know, you know what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know, but I don't want to face it. I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, yeah, but you know the answer. Right.
Just a matter of doing it.
And by the way, you have to really, it's not right for the employee because they're floundering, right? They're struggling. They're probably waking up every morning. Oh, fuck, I got to go to work, right?
Yeah.
Like they probably hate it, right?
It's true.
And maybe, right? Obviously, you got to treat them the right way and do the right thing. Maybe you did them a favor. Maybe their next career move, because you gave them a wake-up call, becomes the defining career of their life, right?
That's a great way to
Maybe
look at
that's hope that I cling on to make myself feel better. But, but I don't think leaving somebody in a job where they're struggling and the people around them are getting angry and they're demoralizing the greater good is doing anybody a favor.
That's a good point. Do you believe in performance plans at all?
Not really.
It's kind of like an HR thing you do, but like 90% of the time or more, it doesn't work out.
I've never seen one work.
Wow. Never in your whole career.
I can't. I'm thinking as we're speaking here. I mean, of all the employees over close to 30 years in business, I can't think of one that works. It didn't mean it didn't, but I can't think of one. So that says a lot about them.
That does say a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in some cases they work temporarily and then they fall back into the old pattern.
Look, I think I mean, sometimes great people are in roles they don't belong to be in, and it's no one's fault. And no one should be upset about it. Mm-hmm. But I think there has to be an appropriate way to have that dialogue and say, this just isn't working. Chris, this is not working, right? This isn't good for you. It's not good for us. I think you probably know that. Let us help you transition. Here's what we can do, right? We can take 3 more months and you can try to find a job with a job. We can get your career counseling service. We can help you with a resume, whatever it may be. But there's a humane way to do that. Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Do you, so you drop into a company now, you have to do a big turnaround, right?
Yeah.
You have to get the right executive team on board. You said you had to let go of 9 out of your 11 and bring in your people.
Well, we separated. It wasn't
it wasn't a performance thing.
In fact, many of them were very talented, great
because you're
people.
building a different company too, right?
I just need to do things different.
Yeah, you're reforming a new organization based on a new vision.
Right. Yep.
So it's important to have the right people on that bus. When you're in that seat now and you're looking at this executive team, what is your process for like going out and assembling that team and saying, all right, how do I make sure we got each of these divisions set? Like, how do you think through that?
I think a lot of it is about giving leaders the ability to lead, right? And coaching them from the side, right? You lay out what are the expectations for you to run this business or to be, a head of a function. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of let them do their thing, right? And nothing makes me happier than never having to bother them again, right? Because they're just doing such a great job. And in fact, I had one leader say to me, well, you're kind of hands off. And I said, well, because you haven't made a mistake yet.
They're like, I want more feedback. You're like, you're doing great.
And that's what I said. I said, you want a weekly one-on-one? I'm happy to congratulate you every week.
Doing a good job.
And he laughed. He said, okay, I get it now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you get great people and they know how to lead, right, the job allows you to, from at least from my perspective, I can think about more strategic issues. I can think about, where are we going to be in 2 or 3 years versus next week or next quarter. I never quite get there completely because there's always something going on.
Yeah.
But if I can get 20% more time to think about those things, I think that's pretty healthy for us.
Huge win.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more selective you are with hiring the right people, the less development, coaching, and all the hands-on stuff you need because they're the right hire for the job.
Absolutely. And by the way, nothing makes you prouder than seeing those people succeed.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the best days at work for me is watching either my direct reports or even a up-and-coming leader do great things and succeed. I mean, that to me, that's just awesome. Right. It's just such a gratifying feeling.
When we talk about running a company with tens of thousands of employees, like you mentioned your time, right? Like whatever you can do to create a lever on your time to focus on higher priority or higher lever activities is your mission, right?
Yep.
Time is the hardest thing, especially when you have so many product lines, divisions, competing interests. How do you think through structuring your time? Are there any key filters you have where I'm going to spend X% on this, Y% on this, or how do you think through your time?
I don't think about it that way.
It's not that deep.
No, it's not that deep. And I'm probably not a good example for a lot of people. I'm a workaholic. I love working. I never quite understood the whole work-life balance thing personally. I got it professionally. Right. And I'm okay with other people finding their fulcrum of where they want to find that balance.
Yeah.
What makes me happy in life is my family and my work, and all the other stuff I'm trying to get better at not doing. I'll give you an example. This summer I've been really busy. I was telling you before we started, right? I've gone out to dinner twice. And you were at one. It was a quasi-business dinner for Rome. The other one was with my wife and some friends. That's it. I haven't been out to dinner in 3 months other than that.
That's an interesting thing because you mentioned too, even after selling Allergan, there was no victory lap. What's the next thing I'm going to build? Right. And I think you need that DNA to be where you're at.
Yep.
But at this level, you're not, it can't be just for the money at this stage, right? Like you've created enough wealth to do what you want with your life, right? But at this point in the game, like what's driving you now?
I like accomplishing things. So what's nice about the industry I work in is we actually make products that help people. It's a lot of fun. So, launching a new drug, for example, I was instrumental in getting a drug that's atypical antipsychotic on the market called Vraylar for depression, for bipolar, for schizophrenia, for a lot of conditions. Like I remember when we were investing in the clinical trial, investors screaming at me that the drug was never going to work. There was a huge generic population of other drugs, and how were you going to compete? And when I was looking at the data and talking to the scientists and the R&D team, we saw mechanistically this could make a difference for people, and it'd also be a big financial benefit for the company. But we spent probably close to $1 billion developing it. Having that now on the market, now I'm in the gym and I see a commercial for it, right? I have nothing to do with it anymore, but I see a commercial for it, and it's really great. Or even a fun drug like Botox, when I see commercials or I see the signs, I still walk down in Miami on the street and you see Botox available here or something. Still makes me feel really great. I'm like, I have a big part of the history of that product, and eye care is even more special, right? Because people really do your vision is your most important sense, right? And any vision loss or blindness is just awful to quality of life. And so anything we can do to continue to advance, people's eye health is just personally really gratifying.
Was there an inflection point for you where it was initially about the status, the money, the fame, and then it became more impact driven, or were you always this kind of heart-centered, impact driven?
Yeah, I don't think it was ever about the status or the fame, because I actually am a pretty private person.
Yeah, you are.
And
So thanks for doing this.
But with the roles that I've had, there is you have to be out talking about your company. You have to be the chief spokesperson for your organization or your company, and so that's part of the responsibility. Financially, sure. I always wanted a secure financial situation for my family, for me, and hopefully for my grandkids one day, if I ever have them, right? It would be great to be able to leave that legacy.
Yeah.
That probably did drive, some, as much as I hate to admit it because it sounds superficial, right? That probably did drive some of my ambition when I was younger. Today, it's just about building things.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am building successful teams and watching people do great things and hopefully creating products that make a difference. For example, I was an early investor and board member in a company that I got involved in right around the time we sold Allergan. I think it was late 19, early 20, right when the deal was signed. Both my daughters have food allergies and they carry the EpiPens. And as they got older, I would ask them sometimes at night, do you have your EpiPen? No, Dad, it doesn't fit in my purse. Or I'm not carrying that thing today. I'm like, well, it's life-saving. Like, you got to freaking have your EpiPen. And so a guy approached me about a company where we're going to take the device and the pen and put it in the Narcan nasal pump and get rid of all the needles and make it super simple. And it just got approved last Friday.
No way. Congratulations.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll be available in a few weeks, and I'll get my daughters, right off the pharmacy shelves when they come out. Really gratifying to have been a small part of seeing that product come out. And it was on Good Morning America last week. It's been in the news a lot. And, you just look at it, even though my name's never associated with it, and nor should it be, right? But you sit back and you're like, that's pretty cool. I was part of that. Like, so many people are going to have life-saving medicine because it's much smaller, it's needle-free, right? They're going to have it in their pocket or their purse. God forbid they need it, right? Because, I made an investment, I got involved in a small company.
I think that's a good, interesting point. To the best part about being in someone like yours position is you just get to be a part of so many cool things that are advancing the world.
Yep.
Right. Whether you're investing, you're building them directly, but there's something about that shared camaraderie. Even if you're an investor, you're a board member, you're building it, but like you have some piece of you that's contributing to that. And I thought about this because initially when I started my company 5 years ago, I wanted to be a solopreneur and just kind of travel,
Right.
have some fun, make $1 million a year, whatever. Just have fun essentially. But then it got really boring because my wins weren't for anybody else. They were for me.
Right.
And I realized I was missing from a chemical level oxytocin, right? I had the dopamine of like winning, but oxytocin is that bonding chemical. It's winning with people.
Yep.
That makes life so special and fulfilling.
That's why when you have great teams, you celebrate together too, right? It's a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
There's that oxytocin, connection. When you have a great family, you have that same kind of
Exactly.
right, wherever that pod is that you can celebrate with, and they get it.
Yeah.
Whether it be family or work friends or whatever, it's pretty cool, right?
I'm curious to get your take on this because I have a lot to learn from you in this regard. But one of my friends shared a quote with me a couple weeks ago, and he said, "The curse of a king is not being able to enjoy his own kingdom." And that really resonated because I think when you're, at least for me, I can speak to this. I'm so obsessively looking to build things and looking to get to a future vision, like get somewhere other than where I am, that as much as I'm consciously grateful for what I have, because the life I live now was my dream 5 years ago.
Right.
But now I'm sitting in that dream, dreaming another dream, and still having a hard time like actually being present and enjoying it. Like for you, like how do you manage being so obsessed and driven with your future visions and enjoying the life that you already have?
Yeah, I don't know if I love that analogy, to be honest, because, I think with there are probably some exceptions of people who are really can't enjoy their kingdom because they're mega celebrities or whatever. They can't just go out and grab a cup of coffee without making sure they're dressed right or say the same thing. They got people following them. That world seems awful to me, right?
Yeah, not
being one of those celebrities with paparazzi following you, maybe that's the exception to that. But I it's kind of like, who moved the cheese, right? You can reach a certain goal and then you realize that was not really your goal, right? And you keep going till you hit that goal. My advice to you in that sense would be figure out what it is you really is going to make you happy. right? Because it may not be that making $1 million, as much as it's a wonderful, ambitious goal a year, right, for someone, they may get there and realize it's got to be 2 million now because I'm consuming more. I bought a bigger house. I have a bigger, more expensive car. So 1 million's not enough now anymore. And now I'm going to go to 2. And now I have 2 homes and I gotta pay for kids' education. I got this. And now it's 3 million. And you could chase that forever, right? And never quite hit it. Or you could just say, look, my goal is to do things I really enjoy doing. Hopefully I get paid well to do it.
Yep.
And have a great family. Right. And
just
that's
simplify.
And that's enough.
And stop making it so outcome driven.
Well, I don't think you should make it. I personally don't think anybody, and I've heard so many people say this to me and I laugh at them. You know, if I had $10 million in the bank, I would just sit on the beach all day. Right.
Sounds awful anyway.
I would just, First of all, it sounds awful, or I'd just stop working. Right.
Yeah.
That feels like a pretty shallow goal to me. Right. And I guarantee you, once you get to $10 million, you're going to wish you had 20 because you now have consumed so many things that 10 million doesn't feel like 10 million anymore.
Absolutely. Because your lifestyle expenses now get up to 5-10 million a year.
Well, and that's the rat race, right?
The hedonistic treadmill where you're the kingdom you built. Really, you have all the responsibility, but you have no time to enjoy it.
Right. Versus, and it took me a while to figure this out, by the way. I only figured this out in the last, let's say, several years.
Really?
What's great, and I was just actually talking to a buddy about this morning. What's great is I love what I do, and I love the people I work with, and I go home to a great family in peace. My kids are in great places. I have good relationships with all my children, and my life is peaceful outside of work. Like, that's a home run. Like, what could be better than that? And I'm healthy. Right, I have my health. My parents are still healthy. Yeah, like life's pretty darn good, right? Like, so what motivates you? It's about succeeding in business. It's succeeding in life. Yeah, it's creating things that will make a difference for people, have an impact somehow, however you want to define it in the world, and do good things and have fun doing it.
I'm really curious about how you mentally handle this. Right, I was talking with Keith Raboy about this a few months ago, how it's really your perception of stress that determines how it occurs for you, right? Stress can either be benefiting you or it can be destroying you based on how you're perceiving it. Yep. Right. And so you have all these fires going on. You've got executives that are fighting all these conflicts. You got a big board meeting where you might not have hit a target. Right. You got all this stuff. How do you mentally handle all that while maintaining that peace and equanimity within yourself?
It's taken time to refine how you do that. But, I think at this point, I don't get too stressed about many things. The things that get me the only things that really get to me today are things that if I had paid a little bit more attention, probably would have gone better and I missed something. Like it's my own fault, right? That I'm upset that I didn't do something or I missed something, and that still drives me nuts, right? It's about me. Yeah. But look, if you miss a target or one of the businesses isn't performing, when you run businesses of any scale, right? Not everything's always working.
Never.
And so you have to be careful. Here's the trap, right? You have to be careful. And I'm trying to think of the right analogy. Business isn't a snapshot, it's a movie, right? It's not a still life photo, it's a movie. So you could take a snapshot of how the business is performing today and be really stressed thinking about it, right? Or you could be really elated thinking about it. But the reality is it never stopped and it won't stop. It's a movie that's going to keep running, right? And so you have to look at the totality of what's happening across a pretty long horizon, right? And so sure, do you take, public companies would take a snapshot every quarter and we report it, right? Is that quarter all that meaningful? And we have, analysts and consensus estimates and all that. I think it's probably a little helpful, but is that a sign of a good business? No. If you own the business, what would you want to see? You'd want to see continuous, profitable long-term growth, right? Over a long period of time. Just beating some consensus estimate of, 10 analysts average It could be less than you did last quarter. It could be less than you did the previous year. It's just the game that was played to get to that number that creates the headline on CNBC. But in and of itself, it's just a picture.
Right.
When you really have to watch, can you understand a movie by just seeing one frame?
And that's what we do. We zoom into that frame and we get on our heads.
Yep.
And we talked about this offline a little bit. The difference between stress and pressure, right? Like when you feel pressure,
yeah,
it's really an internal force, right? You're creating pressure inside your mind, and you're exaggerating or building something up, or you have a distorted perception or some sense. Because I'm wondering how you, like, what thoughts or beliefs give you the ability to operate without creating extra pressure for yourself.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that as we were walking in, and I was thinking about it just for the last 20 minutes, but I don't feel stress at work. I'm not sure I have in 20 years.
Wow.
I feel pressure at work. I feel pressure to do well, pressure to lead people well, to hire good people, to support people, to do well. I feel pressured to do that, deliver on our commitments, whatever it may be. I feel that pressure. But the only time I feel stress is if one of my kids is sick or upset or dealing with a problem, or my wife's upset or dealing with I only feel stress around like things in my personal or family life that aren't going well. But I don't feel stress at work. I feel pressure, and I use that to motivate myself, right? Like that's a motivator to me. Pressure motivates me.
What's your self-talk in those moments? You got like a big target. You're like, we want you to pull this impossible mission off, Brent. In your mind, you're not thinking, oh shit, I can't do this, obviously. What are you thinking in your head? What's your self-talk like?
In fairness, I never overcommit. It's a pretty simple principle to live by. Do what you say you're going to do. People always say, how do you work with, when they ask me, if I come and join you, what's your style? What makes you happy? I said, just do what you say you're going to do. It can be simple stuff. If you say, I'm going to send you something on Friday, well, then send it on Friday. And by the way, if you can't, on Thursday, send me a note just saying, it could be a text, it could be an email, leave me a voicemail, call me, whatever. Hey, I know I promised to see you Friday, but such and such happened. Can I get it to you on Monday? And I'll write back, sure. And then you can get it to me on Monday. Yeah. Right? But just develop a real credibility of being a person who does what they say they're going to do. And so I externalize that too. So maybe that's why I don't have a lot of stress. I don't make commitments on things I don't think I can do. And
that stress almost comes from being outside of your integrity, outside of your alignment.
That's right. I think people, and I see it a lot in Miami and in like in the real estate sector, people, I can do this, I can do that. They get themselves so like out there. And I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, isn't it better just being realistic and talking about what you can deliver, what the return on investment will look like, what the market is likely going to do, than super hype things or overpromise and underdeliver? That's the worst, right?
It's true. I feel like that's probably the best piece of even life advice beyond business. That's like, it's almost trite, but it's so profound. It's worth examining further too, because if you think about business, the whole point is to create raving fans that come back and purchase more of your stuff, so you don't have to keep spending money to acquire new customers, and they stick with you for as long as possible, right? Well, how do you do that? You say what you're going to do in a specific timeline at a certain level of quality, and you execute on it, and hopefully you can even over deliver. And then those people become so happy that they refer you to all their friends, and all that is free acquired business without having to spend any money on ads. It's like, just do what you're going to say you're going to do, and the word gets out, and you have a successfai business.
Credibility is everything in life, right?
Yeah.
In business, in your professional life, in personal life. And so, I do everything I can to be credible. I admire Elon Musk, not to change topics, but, I admire the guy a lot. I read the biography. I've never met him. I'd love to meet him one day. But just, I invested in SpaceX. I'm a big believer in what he's doing in that company, right? And just the profound accomplishments the guy's had, right? But even sometimes in the not too distant future in Tesla, he would commit to huge targets of deliveries, right? And then miss them. Right. And I would say to myself, he's done so much. Why is he doing and I get maybe he's trying to motivate the employees to deliver or the factory to deliver. But, why did he need to put himself in that position? Maybe he doesn't feel stress on anything. I don't know. but outside of that, you look at successful people and they've never they may have grand vision, but they set the targets along the way in achievable ways.
In terms of skills, right? If we just look at CEOs, executives across the board, what are the main things for, hey, you're going to go do an MBA in this for the next 2 years? What should CEOs be studying and skilling up on?
Yeah, nothing in school.
Nothing in school.
Honestly, I don't think it's those skills that will distinguish. There are a lot of really smart people.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really talented, great managers and leaders who are very well credentialed, really academic, but will never be great CEOs. Right? I don't know what the right word. It's probably humility, or check your ego at the door. Right? Unless you're the founder, which is a little bit of a different CEO. CEO founders are a little different animal than other CEOs. Right?
Yeah.
Business is a team sport, man. You can be the quarterback. Think of any NFL team where the quarterback doesn't have a great relationship with the offensive line. And so you could be the most talented quarterback on the team, but man, if you don't understand the routes that your receivers are running, you don't have your lines back, right, and really have a great rapport with them, it doesn't work, right? And understand that everybody on the team plays a really important role. And the reason you get all the credit for being a good CEO is because they all worked well together. Right? It's not you. You're just one player on the team, and it is a team sport.
Yeah, that's what I've found recently, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening going through a similar transition, but I'm in that space of going from founder into a true founder CEO role.
Right.
And realizing how hard management is and scaling through people and getting executive teams to work cohesively together. What do you feel like helped you the most, other than just being in the field and learning there? Were there any particular mentors?
Yeah, I've had great mentors, but I think the one thing that maybe I do better is a great communicator. I check in with everybody all the time. When people come to me with an issue, they'll say, "Oh, we're doing really well with sales this month, but I don't think we can. We're not manufacturing enough product to hit the target." And I'll say, "Wait, have you spoken to the head of manufacturing?" And they'll look at me and like, "What?" I'm like, "You shouldn't be talking to me. You have a teammate that is your partner in this. He should have been your first phone call, or she should have been your first phone call." Right? And really build that collaboration and joint responsibility for success. I spend a lot of time practicing that and hopefully instilling that as a skill set in teams that I'm involved in.
It's such
right?
a hard
Because you
skill.
can't, as the CEO, you can't be the bottleneck for everything. And you can't be you can solve the big problems or help people come together to solve the big problems, but you can't solve every problem.
That's so great.
Right.
Yeah.
And isn't it much better? How great would you feel if you had 5 managers and they figured out how to solve something so they didn't have to waste your time?
Yeah, it'd be the best feeling.
Yeah, you feel like, what a great team this is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so lucky to have these people, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you gotta instill that in people. It just doesn't happen on its own,
Right.
right? And you gotta, obviously, anything you ask people to do, you have to do yourself, right?
Yeah.
I love leaders who are like, I can't get my team to do this. I'm like, well, do you do it? And they look at me funny, and I'm like,
nah.
yeah.
There's so many leadership styles too, though, right? Because if you look at like Jack Welch, hardcore,
Yep.
right? Every quarter, look at your bottom 10%, fire them. Like, just really intense, hardcore. Frank Slootman from Snowflake, intense guy. Steve Jobs would run through any wall to get the best products out the door, even have to sacrifice everything in his life outside of it, right? And then you got Richard Branson, more fun, culture building CEO, more high camaraderie.
Yeah.
So many different styles of leadership. How would you classify your style of leadership? And I'm curious if you can give any tips on how people can find their style and how they should lead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to come a little bit natural to you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be part of your DNA, your personality, right? You can't be a fake person, right?
Yeah.
If you're not Jack Welch and you're never going to act like that, don't try to emulate, right? Find someone that you can relate to, or find a style that's you. And for me, I'm just a straight shooter, right? I'm just straightforward about things. I don't do office politics well. Right. It's always about the greater good and putting the organization first. I'm a big believer that, customers are the beating heart of any business. And I'll give you a great example. I spent a lot of time at Allergan and at Bausch & Lomb today really emphasizing the importance of customers, and really being in tune with customers. And you know, and I have a rule: if a customer reaches out to me, it's same day response no matter what, right? And I try to get in the field all the time with customers. So a CEO of a Fortune 20 company called me and he said, "Oh, I was talking to somebody at, I think it was McKinsey. They said you have a really good customer-centric culture. I want to talk to you about what you guys are doing." So I said, "Well, look, I have a protocol. I ride with a rep, you know, once a month. If I visit a country operation, I start in the field with reps. Then I go to the office. I don't go to the office and then go to the field because I don't understand the market unless I'm out talking to customers, riding with sales reps, and so on and so forth. I walk them through the whole protocol of what I do." He goes, "Well, we're thinking of hiring a Harvard Business School to come in and do a customer-centric course for our top 200 managers." And he started to go through the whole sequence of how they were going to do it, and they were going to score everybody. And I said, "Or you could just ride with a rep." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if you ride with a rep every month, and your direct reports ride with a rep every month, then people know you care about customers. Like, you don't have to, it's not that fancy, right?
You don't need to hire Harvard.
Right, it's not that hard. People understand what's important to a company and the culture based on what leaders or the CEO does. I've said this to my executive team: if you don't ride with a rep once a quarter, you don't qualify for your bonus. I hope you do it more than that, but, you know, to qualify for your annual bonus payout.
So that's a good point there. So you have a core value in the company, which is like customers first. It's all about the customers. But then you have an actual behavior with an incentive plan tied to it to reinforce
Well, just a threshold, right? The incentive plan will pay off of financial performance and other things like that.
Right.
But to qualify, you know, and you know, I stopped even tracking after a while because everybody just starts doing it, right?
Yeah.
And it just becomes an expected behavior. So the point, getting back to your answer, what kind of leader? I try to lead by example, is the point I'm making. Is, you know, I try to be very authentic. I try to stay true to, you know, my true north of who I am and my core beliefs. I'm always relentlessly focused on winning, right? I'm a pretty competitive person.
Yeah.
I hate losing. I do lose from time to time, but I hate it. It drives me crazy. Nothing's more fun than you know, again, it's a team sport. When the team wins, a team celebration is the best, right?
The best.
Yeah.
I think Nelson Mandela said, "Winners are just dreamers who never give up."
Right.
And that's it.
I like that quote better than the king in their kingdom.
You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting though, right? Because you might take a few L's here and there, but if you stay in the game,
no one wins all of them.
Right.
You know, I know there've been a few undefeated seasons, but it's only 1 year.
do you feel people learn more from successes or failures?
Failures.
From failures.
Yeah, but well, hopefully from failures. I think good leaders learn from their failures. Bad leaders cover them up and make excuses for their failures, right? But there is so much insight in a failure, right? And I spend a lot of time thinking about my failures all the time. And I actually say to people, it's okay to fail. And in fact, if you haven't failed, you haven't tried, right? And you're not pushing hard enough if you haven't failed a few of them. But if you're willing to step back and really be honest about why you failed and really be thoughtful about what you could have done differently and learn from it, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to you.
There's kind of just tried advice of don't meet your heroes, right? They'll let you down.
The what?
Don't meet your heroes. Right?
Right.
You hear that all the time. It's like, don't meet your heroes. They're just going to let you down. Like, keep them in that corner of your mind there. Have you met any of your heroes? And I'm curious if you buy that advice.
I don't know if I have heroes in that sense. There are people,
or maybe just people that you really admired for a long period of time that you're like, I can't believe I'm actually sitting down with this person now.
Yeah, you'll laugh at some of the ones. Like, I love Jerry Sienfeld. I finally got to have dinner with Jerry Sienfeld. I was like a little kid. I was like, what do I say to him? Like,
I'm so nervous to ask personal questions.
Right. I sat with, you know, presidents of the United States. It's never bothered me. But sitting down with Jerry Sienfeld, like, I was such a big fan of that show. You know, I think that was probably the only time I was a little nervous around a celebrity.
Did he live up to your expectations of him?
Yeah, it was damn funny. He had some great lines. I think I admire so many people because I always look for, you know, what they did, which was interesting and helpful. And I don't say there's a perfect person out there. Like I said, Elon Musk, I think the world of the guy, but he does a lot of bonehead things too.
Sure.
I would love to meet him right now. He would if I were if someone said who could you have dinner with, tomorrow, I'd probably have him at the top of my list.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he is at the top of my list. I would love to just sit down for an hour and pick his brain.
If you're at dinner with Elon Musk and you have an hour with him, what are you curious to learn from him? What are you picking his brain on?
Without giving a lot of thought, the thing I would probably really want to understand is what's motivating him to be so transformational. Like, talk about someone who's achieved great financial success, obviously, or I think always amongst the richest people in the world, if not the richest, right? He doesn't play the rat race, right? He doesn't have houses and cars and boats, right? He has companies. And you look at some of the stuff like he takes on, right? Like, what's this quest to go to Mars? Like, help me understand why that's so important to you. I'd love to understand something so ambitious, right? Like, I get SpaceX, I get Starlink, right? As a business model, Starlink makes perfect sense. In fact, I just installed my satellite here in Miami at my house as a backup to AT&T. It's great, man. If you haven't tried it,
Starlink's amazing.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better. But I get that business. Like, that's going to change, right? It's going to make a lot of the wired world obsolete. That I get. Bring the internet to places it could never have been. Like, that's pretty cool. But like this obsession to colonize Mars, like, that is so out there in so many regards. Yet, it's somewhat plausible because it's him. Right. And if it were somebody else, if it was Jeff Bezos, who also I think believes that, I'm a little more skeptical of whether he's going to get there or not.
Do you think the main difference is a matter of IQ or a matter of just pure passion and purpose?
I think determination and passion. I'm sure both are world-class intelligence people, right?
Yeah.
But Elon's obsessive, compulsive in a productive, crazy way, if it can coexist, right, to achieve his goals. And I wouldn't want to bet against him.
No.
Right?
No, I don't think he.
What would you want to know if you?
Elon Musk. I like your angle of not going tactical, where it's like I just want to know his inner psychology,
right,
as to why, and really that gives you the how he summons so much energy and focus and is able to handle that much pressure from the world. If I was talking to Elon, I would want to understand more about how he learns, right? How he consumes information, because he's really a master generalist, right? Like, he can build 3 businesses in parallel that are both, all
very different,
all very different domains, all have hardware components, which have tremendously bigger difficulties.
Yeah. Big engineering problems.
Huge engineering problems. Yep. But the amount of knowledge he has to accumulate to be effective at leading those companies is just enormous. And obviously I think he's a bit more intelligent than me. but
yeah,
that said, I want to know
as I understand it from
how
reading
he
his
learns.
book, I mean, he's a voracious appetite to learn.
Yeah.
Right. Which I have a good appetite to learn. I don't think it's as big as his appetite to learn, but
Where
I
it's
love
all
learning.
consuming 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's interesting. Because like similar to you, I love winning. I love playing business. I like winning with people.
Right.
But I also, I've changed in the last 5 years. Initially, it was 100-hour weeks, 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. If someone sent me a meme on Instagram that wasn't success related, I was like blocked. I was like, don't infiltrate my space with anything that is not about winning and success that's helped me get here. Then as I started getting more comfortable with what I had built and still ambitious, now I'm like, I just want to live a world-class life.
Yep.
Right? What's the point of business, right? I want to win. I want to contribute things to the world and make my mark and know that my life meant something. And I used my gifts for a purpose, but I want to enjoy my time with people that I love, and I want to create memories, right? You talk about creating businesses. I want to create memories too, right? And I want to enjoy that. And so I can't really relate to an Elon because I don't want to be that consumed by my work, although I admire it and kind of wish I had more of that. Similar to a Nelson Mandela who gave his whole life to a cause. Right. Like, that inspires me, but I'm almost envious of it.
Actually met him.
You met Nelson Mandela?
I met Nelson Mandela.
So we have a painting back there with him on it. He is one of my absolute. What was it like meeting Nelson?
Pretty cool. I was president of student government at the University of Pittsburgh.
You met him as a student?
I met him as a student. I was president of student government. He came to speak at the university, and I got to go to the dinner with him. And I sat, like I'm sitting across from you. I was just, I probably more, I was 1,000 times more awestruck of him than I was Jerry Sienfeld, to be fair. I just didn't remember it when you asked the question.
Just pop it up now.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. One of will go down in history as one of the most inspirational leaders for sure.
And that's what I think about is like, I think you're also really just inspired by people that take on really hard problems.
Yep.
That will solve meaningful, hard problems in the world that advance people and make a difference. Like,
well, I'm not in that Nelson Mandela class by any stretch. That's in my own
in your own
lane, in my own swim
lane.
lane. Yeah, I would love to be able to say I solved a lot of problems. That would be, that could be on my tombstone with great father, great husband, and solved a lot of problems. That would be a pretty good tombstone.
You talk about this too. You don't take a lot of time off. You work a lot. Right. Like, and the time you do, you're very intentional with your family. You just had a new baby.
Yep.
But you work a lot. You mentioned you hadn't had a vacation in a long time, right? So when you think about living a world-class life, right? Like you're going to accomplish much more, I'm sure, but you have nothing left to prove in business. Like you're certified there, right? You're on someone's Mount Rushmore. Like when you think about living a world-class life, is that changing how you think about allocating your time or about your definition of success now at this point in time versus when you're in your 30s, 40s? Like, are you thinking about that differently?
Yeah, I think I probably changed how I thought about it. I think when I was younger, I thought about, my friends, and broadly defined as being an important component of what made me happy. I think as I've got older, you realize you have a lot of people you're friendly with and are important, but you only probably have 2 or 3 friends, right? And so I've de-emphasized that portion of my life in favor from my family and trying to do great things at work.
So you go deeper with fewer people.
I think that's right. I'm a very social person. I enjoy meeting people, and I enjoy learning and understanding what people are doing and different businesses, different opportunities. I enjoy it, but I used to really, and I'm talking about when I was in my, like maybe 20 years ago, I used to think like I had to have this massive network of friends, and I spent a lot of my free time trying to cultivate that, and I spend a whole lot less of my energy on that these days.
That FOMO of needing to be at all the functions, meeting all the cool people.
Yeah, if there's a great event, why was I invited? Why, or my buddy had a Super Bowl party, and why didn't I get it? Like I want the invite. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm very comfortable with the people that are in my life and very happy.
I think that comes with maturing, and like that's where you actually drive the peace from. It's just not wanting all of it, right? Like
everything. Like honestly, it's I used to have a few homes, a vacation home. I simplified my life.
A lot of toys, and you're like, I don't need all of it.
I don't need any of it. I mean, I really enjoy, having my small group of friends. Most importantly, my family, and then of course, great people at work to do hopefully really interesting, productive things.
Yeah. Have you found any irony to the sense of like where a lot of people want to go build a lot of wealth because they have a vision of what that life looks like, right? You're on the jets, the yacht, the celebrity parties, like, and I know you've done all that. I've done a good amount of that too. And then you're like, shit, this is like not what it's cracked up to be for a long period of time. It just, the dopamine circuits wear out fast and there's just no real meaning in it. Have you found yourself saying, like, I'm curious for you if there was things you thought would be fulfilling that once you got there, you're like, oh shit, I need to pivot. This is not what I thought it was.
Yeah, no, I think everybody has to go through learning that in their own way, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, and I probably even worse today with social media and, the best second of everybody's day being broadcast as
the best second. I like that.
Right. That's
so
it's
true.
like,
it's the snapshot, not the movie.
And it's a quick shot, right?
Yeah. It's a mirror selfie.
Right. And I remember trying to teach my daughters that, like, oh, everybody's happy and I'm sad. I'm like, what makes you think everybody's happy? Well, look at their Instagram. I'm like, you understand that was manufactured. That was the 1 second of the day they were happy. The other 23 hours and 59 minutes, they were, just as unhappy as you are. But there, there's a lot of FOMO out there. I think it's easy to say, it's hard to understand, but it's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
But I think you have to go chase a few of them to figure it out.
Yeah. We learn from the pain, like you mentioned, like that is technically a failure when you quote unquote climb the wrong mountain that you thought would give you
happiness.
Happiness. And
And
you're
it
like,
doesn't.
oh, let me learn from that.
And part of life is the quest, right? That's the
Yeah.
journey, right? You grow, and that's maturity, and the continuing quest to understand, the meaning of life, if you will, right?
Yeah, I think I've recently been going through that realization where there's the destination, there's the journey, and then there's the company on that journey.
Right.
And as I get older, I'm like, the company is the most important.
It is.
It's just, and I feel like my network is bigger than it's ever been in my life, but my circle is smaller than it's ever been.
So you said that better than what I was trying to say earlier. That's exactly how I think about life, right?
'Cause you only have so much time
I have
to
a
allocate.
massive network.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I like and I enjoy talking to,
Yeah.
but I have a really tight circle of people that I really care about.
Yeah, I don't know if you can relate to this, but when I first was getting into the entrepreneurship game, like I just put everybody on a pedestal. Anyone that was successful, I just wanted to be around just to soak in some of that success.
Yeah.
Right. And then as I got into certain rooms and I'm like, this person of this company, that company, but I was like, their character, I don't want to actually be friends with them.
Right.
Right. And so when I started knowing that, I'm like, you know what? Success as a cosmetic label is so overrated. And I'm like I would much rather just be with, someone who has negative $100,000. It's a kind, loving person that I can have a genuine, authentic conversation with. And so I started just thinking about measuring success differently. And I'm like, there's net worth, there's human worth.
Right.
Just because someone has a big net worth doesn't make them more valuable than you as a human. And so I'm like, as I get older, even if someone's impressive, there's a big party, there's a big networking that could make me tons of money in my business. If I don't align at a values level with people, I'm getting better at just saying no and saying, you know what, if you don't align with my energy and who I am as a person, it's too expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look, everybody will set success, their definition differently, but I don't take this as any kind of but like this quest, I know a lot of people do it who try to network, to be around anybody they perceive as successful.
Yeah.
When the reality is 95% of the people, or maybe it's even 99% of the people they think are successful really aren't.
Yeah.
And they figure it out. Now you can learn from anybody. So, spending time with anybody, you can pick up a kernel of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you have to be pretty careful of how you define who you think is successful. Just becoming a CEO of a big public company is not a definition in and of itself of success.
Right.
Right. It's what have you done, right? When you leave the company in 5 or 10 years, did you leave it stronger than when you started it? Did you did you create new products? Do you have a tree of CEOs that came out of your leadership ranks, right, that went on to do other great things? It's multifactorial, but it's not just achieving the job is not any part of my criteria, at least.
I like that. It's what did you actually do and contribute? How did you leave people better off?
Yeah, I have a friend who's a relentless networker, and he'll be like, hey, we're having lunch with so-and-so. It's a super, wonderful, successful person. I'm like, who is it? It's the CEO of so-and-so. I'm like, what makes you think they're successful? Well, the CEO and so of such and such. I'm like, that doesn't mean they're successful, right? They could suck at that job, by the way, right? They could have destroyed that company, right?
And I think it's to the point at a bigger level why we're having problems culturally and societally is where we're just over glorifying and pedestaling the wrong character traits. People are blowing up on TikTok and making the dumbest prank videos, and they become quasi celebrities overnight.
Yeah, it's crazy,
right? And it's like, and we literally call them stars, things we look up to.
Yeah,
right.
That's
the metaphor, fair. And so like we're just pedestaling certain character traits in people, and it's more attractive to gain a lot of followers than it is to actually do the work and earn the character.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I'd love to meet the engineer who redesigned rockets for SpaceX that actually were reusable and cheap, right? Like that's pretty cool, right?
People that are really doing things
Yeah.
and adding real value to society.
I'd love to understand how they they went back to steel, like how they went to all those like decisions that were so unorthodox.
Yeah.
To do something NASA and Boeing and couldn't do, right?
With like a 30-year head start.
And billions of dollars more, right?
Right. Way more resources.
Yeah, way more, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love to sit down and that lunch I would go to, right? Like,
yes.
I'd love to understand that.
Because it's not about, and the pattern I'm pulling from here too is like if you make decisions based off ego and status, it's going to lead you to an inferior life.
Yeah.
right? If you're following your natural curiosity, which is like, I just want to understand how people are doing these cool things so I can add to my knowledge base to make me a better man
Right.
and leader and entrepreneur or founder or CEO, like those things are aligned with your purpose. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to go here just to take a freaking picture with this celebrity,
Right.
like you already lost the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Or, my ambition, I want to do so great so I can buy, a Rolex or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, as soon as you get that Rolex, you want the next one, and
Yeah.
then you'll be on that pedestal.
AP and the Patek.
I've been on those pedestals before, so I don't want to sound disingenuous, but it doesn't lead to anywhere good.
No. And I can relate to it at a much smaller scale than you being, earlier in my journey, but I totally.
You don't find happiness at the end of that chain. It doesn't.
No, I have a whole watch collection and I've worn maybe 10% of them.
And vice, we're both not wearing any watches.
Yes.
I don't think I've had a watch on in a month. Yeah.
I have one final question for you, and on a fun one. Hypothetical question. You get to write one email to the whole world, to 8 billion people. And you get to impart a message, a piece of wisdom that hopefully helps people live happier, more fulfilling lives. I'm curious, what message would you want to share with the world?
What a great question. I wasn't expecting it. So with that much thought behind it, right? And I'd love to be able to, if I was truly in that situation, I'd want to have time to be pretty thoughtful.
Probably spend more than 10 seconds thinking about a message that's going to reach 8 billion people.
Yeah, but I think if you could leave one message to the world and they actually listen to it, right? If you had that opportunity, which would be phenomenal, right? It would be just do good things, right? Like most people in the world are good people, right? We spend so much time in our politics and we're looking at these like 1% clowns that are doing crazy stuff, right? But like most people just want to live good lives. They want to do good things. They want to be good to their friends. They want to have great families. They want to have good careers, right? It's not that hard. Just try to do things in the world that are good, right? And you don't have to chase, these causes with such vigor. Chase them with productivity and let's not turn people who disagree with you into enemies. Turn them into advocates. Like explain, right? Like work on it. I feel like everything today is a fight with everybody. It doesn't need to be, right? Everybody, we all live on this planet. We all want it to be a great place. We all want our country to be a great country. We want our state to be a great state. We want our local community. We all want good things, right? And so just be good to everybody.
Just do good things.
Yeah.
Stop worrying about what other people are doing. Just do good things yourself. Bring good energy to the world.
Well, and somebody's got to fix social media too, but
that'll be another, another conversation.
It's breaking down this society.
But no, this has been amazing. I just want to acknowledge you too, because I feel like you do walk the talk. You are, you're an impressive guy, but I think beyond your business accomplishments, I think you're extremely humble. You carry quiet confidence because you really are about that life. You've really done some amazing things. I hope people that aspire to be successful keep those character traits in mind.
I agree. Thank you.